Hey everybody, it's Eric Pierce. This is All the Fanfare, and I'd just like to remind you that there is no spoon. The spoon is just a manifestation of this virtual reality simulation we find ourselves in, called The Matrix. By the way, the kid that drops that bit of knowledge on Neo is credited in the movie as Spoon Boy. He's the white Dalai Lama looking kid that Neo meets when he goes to see the Oracle. I like to imagine the Soundgarden song Spoon Man is about this kid once he's grown up. He's been confirmed that he's actually not the one. Sorry, kid. You've got the talent, but you're not the one. And so he devotes his life to his spoon talents and the making of music. The Matrix released on March 31st, 1999. It was written and directed by the Wachowskis. It is their third screenwriting credit and second directed film. It pulled in $463 million at the box office. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $880 million, which honestly is a lot less than I would have expected. By the way, we're talking about The Matrix today because it's recently celebrated its 25th anniversary. That's just one of the reasons. This is one of my favorite movies, so I'm always looking for an excuse to talk about it and or rewatch it so that I can talk about it, which I did recently. I was reminded that when this film, in the lead up to when this film came out, there was an ad campaign called What is the Matrix, which leaned into kind of the mystery. It was also a meta thing where the film talks about what is the Matrix, and then the ad campaign was talking about what is the Matrix, and all of us were looking at the movie going, what is this movie, and what is the Matrix they're talking about? There was this air of mystery about the movie. I was a college student working at Blockbuster Video when The Matrix came out. I was a poor college student working at Blockbuster Video when The Matrix came out. Just a brief sidebar, by the way. Blockbuster Video was my favorite job I've ever had. I love movies, and here I am surrounded by movies. It was my mecca. I got the job. I had worked with this woman at a grocery store where I was bagging groceries, and she was one of the managers. I bumped into her when I came in to rent a movie, and we had worked together. She liked me. She said, "Hey, I'm looking to hire someone. Are you looking for a job?" And I said, "Absolutely. I'd love to work here." My interview wasn't actually with her. Turns out she was the manager of the store, but she was assistant to the regional manager. She was the Dwight Schrute in the scenario. And my interview was with this regional manager that covered a number of stores in the northern Michigan area. So he came in, and the interview was short and sweet. He started by asking me my favorite movie, and I gave him 3. I'm always going for that extra credit. I said the Star Wars trilogy. And then he said, "Okay, who's your favorite actor?" Easy, Harrison Ford. Done. Nailing this interview. So then he tried to get me with a curveball. He said, "Name 5 films Harrison Ford's has been in, not counting Star Wars." He thought he had me. I rolled off these 5 films in like 10 seconds. Raiders of the Lost Ark, Blade Runner, Clear and Present Danger, Air Force One, and I hesitated for just a second on the 5th one as my mind was debating between like Witness or Regarding Henry, and my mouth said Sabrina, which is kind of funny because I hadn't seen it at the time. I still haven't seen it. But it didn't matter because I was just dialed into my guy Harrison Ford, and I knew his filmography front to back even if I hadn't seen all the movies. Needless to say, the regional manager was super impressed and gave me a job on the spot. So that was what I was doing in 1999. And between schoolwork and just being a poor college kid, I didn't actually go see The Matrix when it was in theaters. Looking back, I can't imagine what I was doing that was more important than going to see this movie, but at the time, didn't have the time, didn't have the money, whatever. Incredibly, impossibly, the secret of what The Matrix actually was not spoiled for me. I didn't see it until it came out on video, and because I worked at Blockbuster, I got that Blockbuster video hookup. So the way it worked is the new releases always came out on a Tuesday, and so we would get them on Monday, and we would get them all ready to shelf. But then Monday night, we could take home any new release. I think every day you could take home 2 movies if you wanted, but then obviously Mondays, you took home the new releases. So Monday night, I took home The Matrix, watched it with my girlfriend, and had my mind blown out the back of my skull. So the ad campaign, it was super effective at raising questions about this movie and just building that intrigue. Funny thing was, the movie does the same thing. You don't know what the Matrix legitimately is until, I don't know, like halfway into the movie. What is the Matrix? It could be a lot of different things. I just put down a brief list of all the things that I think it could be or is. It's a movie about nouveau goth superheroes. It's a movie about alternative lifestyles that are at war with the status quo. And here you literally have the leather goths versus the suits. It's a movie about identity and suppression of one's truest self. The Wachowskis were brothers during the creation of the film. They've both since transitioned and are now the Wachowski sisters. And there are plenty of LGBTQ allegories in the movie. An interesting nugget I discovered just preparing for this pod, the character Switch, who's the androgynous blonde with the slight accent, was originally meant to be played by two characters, a man in the real world and the woman we know in the Matrix. The name makes a lot more sense in light of that, the Switch name, but the studio wasn't ready for that and squashed it. So the name stuck, but that was kind of background on that. So that trans allegory was always part of the story. The Matrix is also a movie about rejecting the false pleasures of the world and being aware that there's more to life than what you see. It also is one of my all-time favorite movies. I might even put it above Star Wars, and that's, if you followed me any length of time, that's something. That's not nothing. Sometime here I'll do my top 10 movies just to see where the dust settles. But just off the top of my head, that list includes Back to the Future, A New Hope, and Empire Strikes Back, Shawshank Redemption, The Matrix, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Not sure about the other 4 movies, but those 6 are definitely in the list. What is The Matrix? This movie likes to take its time in revealing that answer. We get the prologue with Trinity, and all this, it's an exciting sequence, action, raises lots of questions, and it really just intrigues us further, drives us further. Among other things, The Matrix is a mystery, and getting the answers is just part of the fun. So we get the prologue with Trinity. We get this wonder of an alternate Earth with these unexplained quasi-magical people. There are these mysterious agents who arrive on the scene, and the one Agent Smith tells the cop, "Your men are already dead." So right off the bat, we're thrown off foot because this looks like it happens on Earth, but these are not normal things that are going down. And by the way, I think maybe this is an American thing, but I think the agents tap into this deeply felt fear that there's just something about an ambiguous man in a suit and sunglasses with the full authority of the government behind him that is completely terrifying. But anyway, so this prologue quickly establishes that there are 2 classes of people. There are your normies, which are the cops who are struggling to leap between the buildings. One guy almost doesn't make it. He must have had too many donuts that day. And then there's your people with superpowers, essentially. They can leap tall buildings in a single bound. They just wear shiny leather in place of capes. We quickly established the importance of phones, and like the most important. So it starts with Trinity having a conversation about being a peeping Tom, essentially. Which would that make her a peeping Margaret? Why is it always assumed the guy's the perv? Anyway, which leads into this exciting chase scene where the agents are chasing Trinity, and it concludes with her running into a phone booth, almost like a Clark Kent situation. But instead of throwing off her shiny black leather and revealing a cape, she picks up the ringing phone just seconds before the phone booth is just completely obliterated by this massive truck. The truck backs up, and we see the dangling phone cord, and we see no blood, no body. This mysterious woman is gone, and we're off and running. Again, just a great sequence, lots of interesting questions it raises. By the way, Carrie-Anne Moss kills it. She's great in this movie. I love her. The Matrix put her on the map Previously, she'd done some small roles in TV, including a short-lived Melrose Place spinoff, which wasn't Melrose Place just a Beverly Hills 90210 spinoff, so a spinoff of a spinoff. No wonder it's short-lived and no one remembers it. She guest starred on shows like Baywatch and a bunch of other shows I've never heard of, and was a frequent participant, is that the right word? Actor. And B movies like Flash Fire, The Soft Kill, and Lethal Tender. I am not making those up. Those are real movies. They all sound like Skinamax Greatest Hits. She also starred in a 13-episode fantasy adventure called Matrix. Not The Matrix, just Matrix, which is a funny coincidence. All this was prior to The Matrix. Moss later said that prior to The Matrix, she had no career. So even though she was booking all this work, it was not much of a career, I guess. And, funny thing, looking back now, 25 years later, for those of us who liked Carrie Ann in this movie, I don't think her career really took off like we hoped/expected it would. Although she did recently just show up in the Star Wars galaxy in the new Star Wars The Acolyte Disney Plus series, so for me, that's my Mount Everest, so she is still in the process of arriving potentially, but when you just look at things she's done since The Matrix, it's more missed than hit. She's still doing stuff, but she never really totally arrived. This was not, I don't know if you call it a star-making performance. It definitely put her on the map, but it just made people aware of who she was, but she never really cashed in on that. It doesn't seem like, or maybe said better, she never really delivered the promise that was seemed to be on the table coming out of The Matrix. So that was a long aside, but I do want to go back to the whole mystery thing because it keeps going. After the prologue, we get the scene with Neo asleep at his computer, and someone hacks his computer and is talking to him through his computer, which is super creepy. And clearly Trinity's watching him. She's got an eye on him. Later on, we find out she was prophesized to fall in love with the one. So maybe she's just, getting a feel for what her future boyfriend is into, like what kinds of things he do when no one's looking, like that kinds of stuff. What are his kinks? I don't know. Anyway, the mystery keeps going though because we're informed that Neo is in danger, that people are after him. And again, we don't know. We just met Neo. We don't know what's going on. The overarching question remains, what is the Matrix? And again, not only was that central to the ad campaign, it was central to the movie. And the beginning of the movie is all about, the Matrix, but nobody knows what it is. Later on, Morpheus speaks of a splinter in your mind driving you mad. Like, no crap, dude. Tell us already. What is the Matrix? We quickly glean that Neo is somehow super important, like the most important, even though he appears to be a hacker equivalent of a drug dealer. I have lots of questions about the illegal computer disks he was selling. They seemed analogous to drugs. But since this was set in the 90s, it doesn't really jive with how I remember the 90s. And it also can't be like VR porn or something like that, because that didn't exist. So I'm guessing he's selling bootleg copies of Windows or something, but it seems super sus. And again, whatever he's doing, it's clearly illegal. Later on, even when Morpheus starts to explain what the Matrix is, we still don't get it. He says, "It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth, that you are a slave, Neo. Born into a prison you cannot smell or taste or touch, a prison for your mind." That sounds super freaky. Still means nothing to us at that point. Later, he tells us, unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. Well, show us, brother. And as much as I'm making fun of kind of how they kick that can down the road on answering the question, all that build-up just makes it more exciting. Frankly, this movie is director J.J. Abrams' wet dream. It's just full of questions within questions, the nesting doll of questions. Unlike a lot of J.J. stuff, the answers are actually better than the questions. And, in turn, they generate further questions. But that's just kind of the secret sauce of this movie is all the questions, all the juicy questions and delicious questions it raises. So what is the Matrix? Turns out it's a VR prison for humans so machines can farm us like produce. Isn't that warm and cozy thought? The big reveal when Neo wakes up in the desert of the real is one of science fiction's greatest. And by the way, the body horror in this movie is short but really sweet. We've got the sequence where the agents are interrogating Neo and they drop that tracking bug on his stomach and it worms its way into his belly button, sort of a reverse pregnancy. Super gross. And then we later see the fields where humans are grown and fed liquefied dead. And then there's also when Neo wakes up, there's all the tubes and metal insertions in his flesh. There's this pink ooze bath slash broth that he's just kind of marinating in. Don't even want to think about what's in that. Just gross all around. I kind of like it when science fiction leans into the nasty, I guess. There's also a lot of philosophy just kind of casually thrown around in this movie, especially from Morpheus. I'm not a philosophy guy, so it could all be total BS, but it lands for me. I love this language of the script. I love the way Morpheus talks in general. This is Lawrence Fishburne at his best, in my opinion. I love his performance. This is my favorite of his roles, and I'll even go a step further and say he's easily my favorite character in this film. But what the central kind of conceit of a lot of the philosophy that's being thrown around plays into that creeping suspicion that I think a lot of us feel at one point or another, like, is there more to life than this? Like, is this all there is? And the idea, whether we live in a simulation or whatever, however you want to look at it, just the idea that there's more going on, a spiritual realm or something beyond this physical. The movie really leans into that, and a lot of the philosophy is underpinned by that. And the other thing I'll just quickly mention about the philosophy, because it's related, everyone has since weaponized / bastardized the original meaning of the red pill, blue pill scene, which is unfortunate because the scene is still one of the great scenes. It's still super effective, and I kind of like how the entire time Morpheus is kind of sitting in that leather chair, his fingers almost steepled. He feels very malevolent in that whole scene with his sunglasses, his face revealing nothing, giving vague and cryptic answers, and he's offering Neo this choice, which, by the way, doesn't really feel like a choice at all, because like if someone told you can go on living a lie or I can show you the truth, who's going to choose the lie? I mean, even Cypher, he chose the truth. He later regrets it, but he chose the truth. So it's not really a choice at all, in my opinion. But the whole thing, it just feels like Morpheus feels sort of villainous in the scene. I just like it. And then there's like perfectly timed thunder. It doesn't help that whole vibe, but it's just a cool scene. I just dig it. So The Matrix is a chosen one narrative. We learned that Morpheus has been looking for Neo for a long time because he believes Neo is the savior of the human race, because he was told that by the Oracle, and he devotes his life to finding the one, not the chosen one, the one. He says to Neo at one point, speaking of the agents, he says, they underestimated how important you are. If they knew what I know, you'd probably be dead. You are the one, Neo. And at that point, that still means nothing to us. Just some thoughts and observations I had about the Chosen One storyline. They talk about, this is a direct quote from the movie, we have a rule. We never free a mind once it's reached a certain age. It's dangerous. The mind has trouble letting go. This reminded me a lot of Star Wars, and I probably say that a lot, and I'm sorry, but because I see the world through Yoda-shaped sunglasses, but this is totally true. It does remind me a lot of Star Wars, because in Star Wars they talk about, when it comes to Jedi, they don't like to train people once they reach a certain age. They like to get the young kids when they're still young and impressionable, when they haven't been shaped by trauma and experience, which all in all feels a bit cultish. When you really step back and look at it, they want the kids when their mind can be shaped into what they want, and they're not bringing anything external to the equation. So it's just kind of funny, though, that, again, I'm tying it back to Star Wars because I do that, but I did think it was just interesting that Neo is kind of being told that he's too old for this. Like, you know, they should have identified him a long time ago, I guess. Which then ties to the next thing I think I enjoy about the storyline. There are actually multiple chosen ones. Usually when you come to these kind of chosen one stories of Star Wars or Harry Potter or something, I mean, Harry Potter has two potential chosen ones. We learn later on that Neville Longbottom, of all people, is potentially the chosen one. But, usually in these narratives, there is just only one. For the Harry Potter stories, it's Harry Potter up until towards the tail end. Then we find out, oh, maybe there's someone else. In Star Wars, it's Luke Skywalker. He has a sister, we find out later on. These narratives are always set up to structured to push one person forward, and they're the chosen one, and the story's about them and their journey. But here in this movie, we get this scene where Neo goes to see the Oracle, and he walks into like this waiting room, and it feels like a preschool classroom. There's a bunch of kids in there playing around with blocks and spoons and stuff, making them fly or bend using the power of their mind. I really enjoy that. Because there are other chosen ones, other potential chosen ones, it leaves the door open for both Neo and us that he's actually not the chosen one. Which, though, obviously he is, because he's played by Keanu Reeves, and the movie doesn't have time to introduce 7 or 8-year-old or even 5-year-old or whatever chosen one and make them the hero in the second act. So clearly Neo is the chosen one, but I do like that the story leaves that open, that there are other potential chosen ones. In addition to that, related to that, I do have to wonder, is everyone on the Nebuchadnezzar, which is Morpheus' ship, are they all someone that Morpheus thought or suspected was the chosen one at one point, and then through trial and error realized they were not? This is excluding the two human-grown brothers, Tank and Dozer. But Trinity and Cypher and Mouse and Apoc and Switch, these are all people he frees. Did he free them so they could help him find the chosen one, or did he consider them potentially chosen ones at one point and then realize they weren't? If it's the second, if it's the latter, you can kind of see why Cypher hates Neo a little bit, because at one point he was the big man on campus, and then Morpheus is like, yeah, you're not the guy. I don't know, it's just an interesting thought. Continuing this chosen one narrative, the sparring program, easily one of the highlights of this film. So we get to see kind of the young upstart and the master literally go head to head in a great action scene. I like the entire time that they're fighting, Morpheus is still dropping some truth bombs on him. Do you believe that being faster or stronger has anything to do with muscles in this place? Do you think that's air you're breathing now? Just gradually shifting Neo's perspective, his remapping his thinking about, he's taking him out of the real world and putting him into the Matrix and making him understand and believe that you are not in a real world, you're in a computer simulation, and therefore you can bend the rules. But all this is about Neo gradually learning to become the one. He's learning how to walk the path, and that starts with him learning the rules, and he fails to hit Morpheus until the very end of that fight, and it's a long fight, and Morpheus is beating on him pretty good the entire time. Neo finally levels up during the scene and doesn't hit Morpheus, but he could if he wants to. He pulls back. So then they load the jump program, and Neo literally falls flat on his face because everyone fails the jump. And I really enjoy these try-fail cycles where even though Neo is the one, he's still held back by what he knows and believes from his previous life. He has not been able to unlock his mind and let go. Not to bring up Star Wars again, but I'm going to bring up Star Wars again. A lot of people have a problem with the sequel trilogy because Rey never has these opportunities. She kind of arrives on the scene fully baked, and she grows in power, and people never really see her fail. And I think that's why people complain about her. There's obviously some naked misogyny about her being a female Jedi. Some people just can't get on board with that because she doesn't have a penis. And you can't do anything about that. But then for the people who have genuine complaints, I would have liked to have seen her learn to become a Jedi. I can understand that. Here with Neo, we get those scenes. We get the scenes of him trying to learn, not necessarily to become the one, but just how to operate in the Matrix, and he's failing. And they're just delightful scenes. I like the Oracle scene. in later films, when I'm talking about The Matrix, I'm only really talking about the first Matrix, the one that's literally called The Matrix, because the sequels, which by the way I haven't seen the fourth one yet, Resurrection I believe it's called, but Reloaded and Revolution. Now the names are sounding funny to me. I know the second one's Reloaded. I'm fairly confident the fourth one is Resurrection, and I think the third one's Revolution. But anyway, 2 and 3, they just get too far afield and too wrapped up in their own quasi philosophy and their own rules, and they stop making sense. And the Oracle's part of that problem in those movies. But here in the first one, in The Matrix, I really like her scene. It's really well done. It's obvious the whole time that she does know things, that she can see things, and she's dropping hints left and right. But Neo is, as she points out, not too bright, so he's not picking up on anything she's putting down. By the way, Keanu Reeves was born to play this role. I'm not implying he's dumb, but he just pulls off this slightly bewildered expressions vibe better than anyone. Just kind of like the goofy but dumb, like golden retriever kind of vibe. But yeah, he's really good at it. But anyway, so the Oracle gives Neo permission to both reject his destiny and a sneaky way to accept it, kind of backdoor into it, which is the only way he possibly will, because he doesn't believe in fate. So for him to actually believe he is the one, he has to almost be tricked into it. So she lays the groundwork for that. I love all that stuff. All that is set up for the big showdown, the moment when Neo actually believes that he actually doesn't believe he's the one initially. He believes that he can save Morpheus by sacrificing himself because the Oracle foretold that this would happen. And then so he elects to do that. He elects to save Morpheus, put himself on the line. In the process of doing that, he starts to believe that he actually could be the one. All this builds up to, and by the way, the entire time the movie has established that agents are bad, the most bad. Like you don't mess with agents. When you see an agent, you run. Everyone, I believe there's a quote that says, everyone who has ever stood their ground and fought has died. Everyone's fought an agent is just 0 for 1. The movie has done this really great job of establishing agents as the most bad of bads. And then we get that scene where after Neo rescues Morpheus and then helps Trinity survive the crashing helicopter, they make it to a phone booth, and Morpheus and Trinity get away. Agent Smith blows up the phone before Neo can accept the third phone call. And Neo has this moment where he stops and looks at the stairs so he can run away, and then he looks back at Agent Smith and turns to face him. And it's just such a powerful moment, a powerful example of a character arc in action. And as Morpheus says, he's beginning to believe, like he actually believes he is the one. Because why else would he stay? It's suicide to stay. He should run. But he believes he's the one at this point. And because he has, as Morpheus said earlier, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking it. And he has started walking the path. And this is just the next step on that. All this is just exquisite stuff. I love all of it. In my opinion, The Matrix is one of the best chosen one narratives. In fact, let me just quickly run down my top 5 because I love throwing this kind of stuff in these pods. My top 5 chosen one narratives. Number 1 is not actually The Matrix. It's Dune. I think Dune is the only... I wrote a story about this on allthefanfare.com for paid subscribers. Only $3 a month though, so don't let that stop you. But anyway, I wrote a story about how Dune is the only prophetic storyline that really makes any kind of sense, because the chosen one narrative prophecy has been intentionally and purposefully planted and groomed centuries before by the Bene Gesserit, so that when Paul Atreides arrives on the scene, the fields have been sowed and everyone's ready to receive him because he checks all the prophetic signs boxes. But it's not really a prophecy. It's only a prophecy like retroactively. It's really more just like a fulfillment of plans that have been made. But he's still chosen one. And I just love how that's all done. So that's my favorite one. Number 2 is The Matrix, specifically just this first film, for all the reasons I've said so far. Number 3, I have A New Hope / the original trilogy. Luke isn't necessarily a chosen one. I mean, he is, which is why he's on this list. But the chosen one, it's not really prophetic so much as Yoda and Obi-Wan have been planning for this moment where Luke could become strong enough to face his father and overthrow the Emperor. And Luke Skywalker is kind of the blueprint for kind of chosen one / hero's journey narrative. So, and of course it's Star Wars, so whatever. So he's number 3 on my list. Number 4, I have Harry Potter. The prophecy is foundational to the story. It's there from the very first beats. And it feels a little hand-wavy at times. And maybe that's just because it's YA, but that's my number 4. And then number 5, I have the prequels, the Star Wars prequels. The prophecy doesn't really make much sense. It's never properly explored, which is kind of crazy considering they have an entire trilogy that's about Anakin Skywalker's rise and fall. They skip over all that so they can spend more time with Gungans and clones and stuff, unfortunately. So that's number 5. Collider claims that Lord of the Rings is a chosen one story, which I have a problem with. And this is one of the reasons I don't read Collider. In my opinion, Frodo isn't a chosen one. There were no prophecies about Elijah Wood. Frodo was grudgingly gifted the One Ring by Bilbo, and thereafter burdened with its destruction. No one chose him to do it. No one prophesied he would do it. He unfortunately got the ring gifted to him and then volunteered when push comes to shove, and it was clear someone had to step up and get rid of it. So not a chosen one. Obviously a hero, a savior character, all that stuff. And Lord of the Rings is an all-time story, but in my opinion, he's not a chosen one. So disqualified. I love The Matrix. If that's not clear already from everything I've just said about the movie, there is one problem. Well, there's more than one. There's 2 problems with The Matrix. But the one I'm going to hit you with right now, the trouble with the movie is the real world is so much less interesting than the artificial one. You kind of can understand why Cypher wants to go back in, because the real world sucks big time. Everything's gray and their food sucks and it's cold, and there's only one girl on the ship and she's got the hots for Neo, so poor old Cypher has to spend an awful lot of time in his bunk. And yeah, that's a Firefly joke for those brown coats of you out there. Speaking of which, I need to cover Firefly here at some point. Not to go totally off tangent, but Firefly is one of my all-time favorite TV shows / universes. I love it dearly. And I think I just need to do a rewatch. There's only 13 episodes plus a movie, so it won't take me too long, but it's coming, people. Yeah, so anyway, the real world in The Matrix sucks big time. I think that's something that kind of drags down the sequels, in addition to all the philosophy bullcrap and the way the story kind of just gets caught up in its own mythology. The sequels spend a lot more time in the real world and outside the Matrix, which is to their detriment, especially Revolutions, which I believe is the 3rd one. The Matrix is just pretty damn cool. If you can overlook its intent, you can understand why some people don't want to be unplugged. You can understand why Cypher wants to go back in. Speaking of Cypher, nobody ever mentions him among the great villains. And I understand he's very snivelly. He's the antagonist of this film is clearly Agent Smith, Hugo Weaving doing work there. There's something really villainous about Cypher. If you just think about what he's doing here, he's betraying all of humanity so that he can be put into a human farm, have his mind wiped, and go on believing the steak he's eating in the simulation is real. Like, that's pretty shady. That's pretty shameful. By the way, why does he even believe the machines will uphold their end of the bargain? If I was them, I probably would just slop him and feed him to the next batch. Speaking of food, I like when movies have stuff with food in them. I don't know, maybe it's just because I like to eat. Speaking of food, I do like the bit on the ship when they're eating breakfast, and it's just like it looks like the worst bowl of oatmeal you've ever seen, like waterlogged oatmeal. And then Mouse starts talking about tasty wheats and how do we know the machine's got the taste of tasty wheats right? What if it tastes like, I don't remember the examples that he used, but what if what they thought tasty wheat tasted like Cheerios or Wheaties or whatever? I don't know. I love that little bit. It just makes me happy. It's just kind of, I said I'm not a philosophy guy, and I'm not, but that's the sort of philosophy I subscribe to. Those are the things I think about. Speaking of Mouse, the actor who plays him, I guess, was typecast into playing skeevy kind of fringe characters in this movie. He's, I mean, he's the little guy, but he's actually like a digital pimp. He created the Lady in Red. He's trying to hook Neo up for some one-on-one quality time. But then, hey, to bring up Star Wars again, stop me if you've heard that before. He shows up 3 years later in 2002 in Attack of the Clones, playing the guy who comes up to Obi-Wan in the club and tries to sell him death sticks until Obi-Wan mind tricks him and tells him to go home and rethink his life. Those are the only 2 times I've ever seen this actor show up in anything. And again, he's both times he's playing vaguely sketchy type characters. There's nothing to do with anything. I just think it's funny. My only real complaint with this movie is the ending itself makes no sense, no matter how you look at it. Let's just break down real quick how the movie ends. So Neo, after he has that fight with Agent Smith, that throwdown, which he wins, but then Agent Smith just hacks a new body and then starts chasing Neo. So Neo actually does a smart thing and runs, because he can't fight like a billion people, because Smith will just keep finding fresh bodies. So Neo starts running. He runs from the 3 agents. He makes it into a room with a ringing phone, but Agent Smith is standing on the other side of the door with his gun. He shoots Neo in the chest a couple times. Neo doesn't go down, so then Smith just unloads a full clip into Neo. Neo dies, both in the Matrix and the real world, because that's the rules according to the story. The mind can't survive without the body. The body dies in the Matrix. The mind dies in the real world. Dead is dead. Those are the rules. So Neo dies. Flatlines. He's dead. Trinity then confesses her love to Neo's corpse in the real world. And she says he can't be dead, because the Oracle told her something too. The Oracle told her that she would fall in love. The man that she would fall in love with would be the one. And she loves him. So he can't be dead. That's a cool sentiment. Trin, would have been nice if you had told Neo while he was still breathing. My question here is, did the prophecy say Neo had to be alive to hear that you love him? Because I doubt it did. So too little too late, sis. Like, you missed your chance. But then she leans in and kisses Neo's very dead lips. And suddenly this becomes a Disney movie, because Neo's heart starts beating and he wakes up and he's alive all of a sudden. So not only that, Neo is awake and alive in both the real world and the Matrix. He's looking at her in the real world, and then he's back in the Matrix. And her lips have awoken secret knowledge in him. Not only does he not have to dodge bullets, he can just hold out his hand and stop them in midair and select one at random and study it and then let them fall. He can jump in Agent Smith's body and consume him from the inside out. He sees the Matrix in code. All this stuff unlocks, and if we just look at what the movie's doing, it seems like it unlocks because of Trinity's lips. So what's in her lipstick? How did that happen? Why didn't she just kiss him 2 hours ago and skip all this? TBD, because the sequels, we don't get any answers there either. So this ending just makes no sense. I'm being flippant with some of that stuff about Trinity, but fact of the matter is, I don't understand how Neo physically and literally dies in both places, the real world and the Matrix. Trinity lays it on him, gives him a heartfelt, I love you, you can't die, kisses him, and then he magically wakes up and he's alive again. This is the part of the movie that frustrates me the most, because it does not make any sense. It should not happen. If she had broke out a defibrillator, hit him with that, and then hit him with the lips, hey, I'm all there. I'm on board with that. But as it is, I don't think so, Carrie Ann Moss. So that's all I have to say about The Matrix. I love this movie, even though I left it on a bad note there with complaining about Trinity. I do love this movie. It's one of my favorites. Like I said, it's a top 10 film for me. It's almost perfect, except for that very minor thing at the end when it becomes a Disney movie. That's my only real problem with it. But otherwise, love the movie. This has been All the Fanfare. We'll be back next week talking about the 4-film Christopher Reeves Superman. I don't know what to call this thing. It's not a trilogy, quadrilogy, something like that. I think there's a technical math word for that, but I'm not really a math guy either, so don't know what to call it. We're just going to call it the Christopher Reeves Superman movies. We'll be talking about that next week. In the meantime, if you're looking to get your fix, head over to allthefanfare.com where I've got long-form articles. There's a newsletter you can subscribe for. If you want to support the pod, $3 a month will get you exclusive access to all kinds of juicy and fun articles like the one I mentioned before. And until next time, remember, there is no spoon. Spoon Man!